This is The First Century, a podcast devoted to stories from that influential period of history including Rome, Judea, Christianity, and more. I'm your host, Dr. Brian Schmisek. Get ready to go back in time and enter a world before computers, the stagecoach, the printing press, or even stirrups had been invented for horses. We're about to enter the first century. Episode 4. The Death of Marcus Agrippa and Herod the Great. Augustus spent some time in Hispania and Gaul before returning to Rome in 13 BCE, when the Roman Senate commissioned on July 4th of that year an altar of Augustan peace to honor what the princeps had accomplished. The Roman general and politician Varus was named consul for that year with Tiberius. The year before, Varus had married Vipsania Marcella, daughter of Marcus Agrippa and his second wife, Claudia Marcella the Elder. Varus thus became close friends with both Marcus Agrippa and Tiberius. Now that Marcus Agrippa had returned from the east, Augustus sent him on a mission to subdue Pannonia, modern-day Western Hungary. When the rebels there heard that he was coming, they immediately withdrew, and Agrippa was victorious again. On his triumphant return to Rome, Marcus Agrippa fell ill and died in 12 BCE in Campania at the age of 51. Augustus declared a month of mourning after a lavish funeral. Augustus also ensured that each of Agrippa's children received a proper education, and he placed Agrippa's remains in his own mausoleum, even though Agrippa had prepared a mausoleum for himself. The following year, in 11 BCE, Herod the Great's son Aristobulus and his wife Bernice had a son. The proud couple, demonstrating their Roman fealty and allegiance to the emperor, named the boy Herod Agrippa, after the Roman general and dear friend of Caesar Augustus, who had died the year before. With Agrippa dead, and 27-year-old Julia now widowed for the second time, Augustus insisted that his stepson Tiberius divorce Vipsania and marry his own daughter Julia. Julia, 3 years younger than Tiberius, had a reputation as a wild child, prone to adultery. She had even been eyeing Tiberius, and it seemed to be an open secret that she had designs on him. Her first marriage was when she was 14, and for that, Marcus Agrippa officiated at the wedding because Octavian was on campaign in Spain. The marriage lasted only 2 years because that husband died. Her second marriage was to Marcus Agrippa, during which there were rumors of adultery on her part, but they produced 5 children: Gaius, Julia the younger, Lucius, Agrippina, and Postumus, the latter so named because he was born after Agrippa's death. Augustus would dote on the 2 older boys, Gaius and Lucius, and eventually he would consider them his heirs. Augustus's idea was that, in effect, Tiberius would marry his own stepsister. Tiberius thought that was a terrible idea, as he truly loved Vipsania and had no desire to divorce her. Besides, they had a child together, and little Drusus was only a toddler. Tiberius was said to have suffered mental anguish at Augustus's request, but eventually, of course, he submitted, because it was the emperor himself, his stepfather, who was insisting, and it was the emperor's daughter, Augustus's only biological child, that he was to marry. Tiberius knew that Augustus wanted to keep Julia from other potential suitors. Besides, should anyone else marry Julia, that would create complications for Tiberius's own hopes and desires to succeed Augustus someday. So at Augustus's insistence, Tiberius married his stepsister Julia in 11 BCE. After a few short months, Julia's marriage to Tiberius was unhappy for him and a source of embarrassment and scandal. To make matters worse, their only son died in infancy, and they did not produce any other children. Some years earlier, Augustus had established morality laws for the people, including, in 17 BCE, making adultery a public crime, punishable by confiscation of property and exile, separate islands for each of the offending parties. It was even permitted for a father to kill his daughter and the offending partner if they were found guilty of adultery. If a husband had an adulterous wife, he could kill her under certain circumstances, but if not death, then divorce was required. It soon became clear that Julia was violating those very laws, which created a quandary for Tiberius. But there were other issues to be addressed in the empire. Beginning around 10 BCE and lasting nearly 16 years, a combination of Tiberius, his brother Drusus the Elder, Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus, and Drusus the Elder's son, conducted long campaigns north of the upper Danube and east of the Rhine, known to the Romans as Germania. They were hoping to expand the Roman Empire and succeeded in defeating several tribes. On January 30th, 9 BCE, despite the skirmishes in Germania, a new altar of Augustan peace was consecrated on the northern outskirts of Rome, on the northeast corner of the Campus Martius. Peace in this case meant no civil wars. Augustus himself, with several priests, proceeded up the altar, ascended the stairs, and sacrificed an animal. That same year, 29-year-old Drusus the Elder, younger brother of Tiberius, was killed as a result of a riding accident when campaigning against the Germans across the Rhine. Tiberius was in the north of the Italian peninsula, but as soon as he heard the news, he rode unceasingly to be with his brother and arrived in time only to see him die. Tiberius then led a procession, walking in front of the corpse all the way back to Rome, where there was an outpouring of support for their deceased hero. The Senate raised an arch in his honor on the Via Appia, and gave him and his descendants the honorific name Germanicus, which is why his then 6-year-old son received that same moniker. The following year, Augustus sent his preteen grandson Gaius to accompany Tiberius in campaigning against the people living on the east bank of the Rhine. Tiberius was again successful, now having become Rome's most famous general, and it was a good learning experience for Gaius. The Senate continued to vote honors for Augustus. They recalled that the month of Quintilis, the 5th month, had been renamed July in honor of Julius Caesar. Now it seemed fitting that Sextilis, the 6th month, should be named after Augustus, and so it was named August in 8 BCE. Augustus now recalled Tiberius to Rome to be named consul and to enjoy an otherwise rare triumph. Moreover, the Porticus of Livia, a public space, was finally complete and dedicated in January of 7 BCE. It had walking spaces, gardens, paintings, sculpture, and provided a pleasant environment for the people. Augustus was happy to have provided this impressive monument built on the site of Pollio's former estate on the Esquiline Hill, which the princeps had razed to the ground, as he wanted no memory of Pollio in the city. Further, he wanted to make an example to those with ostentatious wealth, known also for their cruelty, as Pollio was. Augustus preferred public spaces and building projects to private displays of wealth. Tiberius's triumph and the dedication of his mother's portico was celebrated by feasts in their respective honors. Tiberius gave a banquet to the Senate on the Capitol, and Livia gave one on her own account to the women. When Alexander and Aristobulus returned to Judea after about 7 years in Rome, they were welcomed ardently by the crowds. King Herod was even prepared to divide his kingdom between them, before he had a change of heart at the instigation of his sister Salome, the worm-tongue. So on charges of treason, Herod executed both sons by strangulation around 7 BCE. King Herod then elevated Antipater II, his firstborn son, from his first wife Doris, to co-regent and heir apparent. At the time of his execution, Aristobulus had been married to his own cousin Bernice. The couple had 5 children, including 4-year-old Herod Agrippa. Though he had killed their father, Herod the Great retained affection for these grandchildren, and eventually, accompanied by their mother Bernice, he sent them to Rome to be educated and to be near the center of imperial power. It was a strategy that would bear great fruit, as they would become prominent in the next generation of political leaders. In Rome, Bernice became friendly with Antonia the Younger, daughter of Mark Antony and Octavia Minor. Antonia the Younger had been married to the recently deceased Drusus the Elder, Tiberius's brother. She had a son named Claudius, who would eventually become emperor in 41 CE. Tiberius also had a son named Drusus. Antonia supported Bernice and her family in Rome, and the children played together and became friends. With this connection to such a powerful family, Herod Agrippa became friends with Claudius, as they were the same age and good playmates. But Herod Agrippa was even closer to Drusus, Tiberius's son. Thus, from the age of about 6, Herod Agrippa grew up in Rome and came to know nearly every member of the imperial family. Bernice, Herod Agrippa's mother, became one of Antonia the Younger's closest friends, a friendship that would prove extremely beneficial. Pressure continued to build for Tiberius as Augustus gave him tribunician power and now wanted him to be his representative in the East, as Marcus Agrippa had been. This seemed to be setting up Tiberius as his number 2 heir apparent. However, it also seemed just as likely that Julia's 2 sons by Agrippa, Gaius and Lucius, were going to be the true heirs. So Tiberius made a very unusual choice to leave his adulterous wife Julia without divorcing her, and even to leave Rome itself in a period of self-imposed exile on the Greek island of Rhodes in 6 BCE. 14-year-old Gaius and 11-year-old Lucius were too young to be named heirs. Augustus was upset with Tiberius's decision and encouraged him to stay, but to no effect. That same year, the Roman general Varus was sent to Syria to serve as its governor. Next time, we'll learn about the death of Herod the Great and the ramifications that brought to Judea.